Good
Good
afternoon. Go ahead, Rob.
I was going to say good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rob Curtin here at DESE. Hopefully, you're all here to hear about the competency determination guidance and policy submission process. I'm going to turn it over. We're going to let people join, continue to join here for a minute or so. But I'm going to turn it over now to Helene we're going to record this webinar. And she's got a bit of housekeeping to do in terms of reading something related to the use of Zoom, and then we will get started.
Okay, great. Good to see everyone, or sort of see everyone. Good to be with you. Erica Gonzalez just posted in the chat a message. Please be advised that DESE does not authorize attendees to record or to use AI transcription tools during this meeting. DESE does not endorse any unauthorized transcripts related to third parties by third parties of its meetings. And with that, I will turn off my video and turn it back over to Rob.
Great, thank you, Helene. Good afternoon. Again, my name is Rob Curtin, leading our data assessment and accountability work here at the department. And appreciate you all taking the time today to join us to hear about the competency determination guidance that we recently released and the associated policy submission process. What I'm going to do today is to run through a set of slides that is a bit of an overview of the guidance that we submitted and the requirements that have been set forth for districts. I'm going to run through those today with you. And make sure we have plenty of time to take questions. A couple of housekeeping items. Please enter your questions through the Q&A function of Zoom, and that's how we will be taking them. If you don't see them on the screen, some people Zoom sometime a little different. If you click on the More button, there might be a Q&A toggle there as well. To answer the number one question that we always get, yes, we will be sending out these slides to all of you. We have some bit of work to do on the recording and such, but we will make sure in the coming days that you get a copy of these slides and a link to the recording through the On the Desktop feature that we use to communicate with all of you regularly. So with that, I think we will get started. Today's agenda, we're just going to cover a little bit of the background, the key information, sort of key takeaways for all of you as it relates to the requirements that exist for districts related to the competency determination. We will, again, as I've covered with you a couple of times, but we will cover with you again the updated competency determination requirements. We'll talk about the coursework as it relates to those requirements. We'll talk about the policy requirements, in other words, the questions that we're going to ask of you that you must answer for us related to the competency determination. We'll talk about the submission of your competency determination policy and the associated local graduation requirements. And finally, we will end with questions for all of you, again, through the Q&A function through Zoom. So, the big news here is that on July 17th, a couple weeks ago, we released three things. Those links, I believe Kinnan is going to put them in the chat for you, but there were three things. The first, and probably most important, but they're all important, is the document that is the competency determination guidance and policy submission process. These were shared with you via and on the desktop. And the links are, Kinnan will be putting the links into the chat. The second were a set of courses, we'll talk about this a little bit more in a minute, that are aligned with the new competency determination requirements. And a third was a memo out of our special education policy and planning unit dealing with graduation and transition planning for students with IEPs, specifically some important stuff here related to students that are placed outside of the district, either at collaboratives or approved special education schools. So those three pieces of guidance were released on July 17th. The links are being shared with you. But once you get the slides, they're also linked in the titles here. Those are the things that are underlined are actually links for you to be able to review if you have not already. But again, they were originally shared with you through and on the desktop. All of these guidance and any related resources moving forward are going to be posted to a new competency determination page. That competency determination section of our website used to be on the associated with MCAS. It is no longer, and we are building a new competency determination web page, and that should be ready in the coming days. And you will be notified of that as well, and hopefully we'll be able to share that link with you when we send out this information as well. But we're in the process of building that, and that will contain all of these guidance and any future related resources that we develop. Background that I'm sure everybody is aware of: in November of 2024, through a ballot initiative, Massachusetts voters approved a ballot question that removed the use of MCAS as the sole basis for meeting the requirements of the state's competency determination. We tried as best as we could to get as much information to you as we could have as quickly as possible. And that resulted in an updating of our regulations related to the competency determination. In May of 2025, our board, the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, voted to amend these regulations. And then we have tried to, as quickly as possible, turn around guidance related to those amendments to the regulations, which is what we are here to talk about today. Here are sort of the key takeaways for all of you, and then we're going to get into the detail. But this is the requirements that have been placed upon districts as a result of the amending of the regulations following the change in law through the ballot initiative. All districts that graduate students must develop a CD policy that details how students will meet the new requirements. Couple things here. The first, I've had several districts reach out to me that serve only students in K-8 and want to know whether this applies to them. The answer to that is no. We've invited them to today's webinar in case it might be of interest to them about what's going to happen with their students as they go on to high school. But the requirements are only applied to districts that graduate students. Okay. Also gotten a few questions about whether or not districts have asked, well, I thought we already did this once the ballot question changed for the class of 2025. The answer to that is this is new. The Board of Elementary and Secondary Education adopted new regulations that have new requirements for districts. So this is something new for all districts to do. All districts that graduate students must do something new. The regulations require that this CD policy that the district will adopt, it must be approved by the district's governing body, whether that be a school committee, board of trustees, whatever it might be called for your district, whatever it might be called, it must be approved by that district governing body. That guarantees that this will be a public process, and that approved CD policy must be submitted to the department in GEMS after it's been approved, and that must happen no later than December 31st, 2025, as written in the regulations. Once it has been approved by the district's governing body, that CD policy must be publicly posted, and it must be translated into different languages to ensure meaningful access for all parents and families in your district. I'm sure this is something you're accustomed to make sure that all of your stakeholders' families have access to the information that you're posting on your website. In addition, upon submitting your CD policy through GEMS to us, and we'll get into that a little more in a minute, districts must also submit their local graduation requirements at the same time when they submit their CD policy to us. This is something we have not collected in mass before, and will collect both at the same time this year. Reminder for those that maybe haven't heard some of my previous presentations, and you might thinking, what's the difference? The CD policy only goes, the competency determination requirements only cover through grade 10, whereas your local graduation requirements cover the entire span of high school. Okay, the updated competency determination requirements. As described in the new regulations, the CD represents two different accomplishments. The first is that students must show a mastery of skills in ELA, math, and science, and they must demonstrate the satisfactory completion of relevant coursework aligned to the standards measured by the high school English ELA, math, and science MCAS assessments administered in 2023. That language is from the new law that came out of the ballot question and required two things: to show mastery and to satisfactorily complete coursework. Okay, so our guidance and your requirements is to tell us what your policy is going to be in order for students to both show mastery and satisfactorily complete coursework. On the mastery side, in accordance with the regulations, to show mastery, a student must successfully complete, in accordance with the district's grading policy, the final assessment for a course, or a capstone or portfolio project, or an equivalent measure identified in the district CD policy. A big component throughout all of this is that much of this is left up to district discretion. Okay, we have given you ideas here. For instance, a final assessment for a course, and you'll have to tell us how a student will have to do on that final assessment, or how they will have to complete a capstone or portfolio project, at what level they'll need to do so. But you will see throughout here that there is generally something along the lines of an equivalent measure identified in the district CD policy. Okay, so when you are going to submit your CD policy to us, and we're going to talk about the template in which you're going to do that in a few minutes, you're going to explain to us what a student must do to show mastery in accordance with your grading policy. Maybe that's a specific grade, or it could be something that the district identifies, but that is what's going to have to be identified, written down, publicly voted on, and submitted to the department. You're going to tell us what a student must do in order to demonstrate mastery. The second half is the satisfactorily complete coursework. In order to satisfactorily complete coursework in accordance with the regulations, a student must earn full credit in accordance with your grading policy in the courses listed in the table on the next slide. We're going to talk about how that works with the courses that we have put out there, okay? But there are two components here. One, how are you going to define satisfactorily completing the course? And in addition to, that can mean earning full credit in accordance with the district's grading policy. And you're going to then tell us how a student actually demonstrates mastery as well. In the policy submission template, you'll explain to us how a student earns full credit in accordance with the district's grading policy. That might be a certain grade for certain courses. That could be, depending on what your grading policy is, depending if you're talking about a letter grade system, a number grade system, standards-based, however that might be, right? You're going to explain to us how a student earns full credit in accordance with the district's grading policy. And you're going to, again, have that publicly vetted, voted on, and submitted to the department. In terms of the coursework requirements, you'll see the language for ELA, math, science, and U.S. history. We'll talk about U.S. history in a second, but you're going to see throughout here a phrase that we have used, and this was a result of a change we made after public comment, which was a good change to make. And that is the equivalent of. You're going to see that throughout here. And the reason why we're using the language of equivalent of a specified number of years of coursework is to accommodate the different instructional schedules that exist across the Commonwealth. Mainly, we heard from schools, and we thank public comment coming in on this, to accommodate, for example, block scheduling, where the content might be covered in half a year. So if it was strictly to say 1 year, there could be a problem there. So we have added in the words equivalent of in here to be able to cover those different instructional schedules that exist. as long as the content that's being covered is the equivalent of 1 year. So in terms of the coursework requirements that are now in the regulations, in ELA, students are required to complete the equivalent of 2 years of high school English language arts courses. And to satisfy this requirement related to ELA, those courses must be taken in grades 9 through 12. So you're going to tell us in your policy submission, you're going to develop that policy submission, have it voted on, and then tell us what students are going to have to do in order to satisfactorily complete coursework and demonstrate mastery in 2 years of high school English language arts courses, and those courses must be taken in grades 9 through 12. For mathematics, the requirement is for the equivalent of 1 year of both Algebra 1 and Geometry, or the equivalent of 1 year of both Integrated Math 1 and Integrated Math 2. Whether to follow the algebra geometry sequence or the IM1, IM2 sequence is determined by the district, but that equivalent length of the courses must still be met. So in math, again, Algebra 1 and Geometry, the equivalent of 1 year, or the equivalent of 1 year of IM1 and IM2. This is different from ELA in that middle school math courses may be certified by the district as meeting the coursework requirement for the mathematics component of the competency determination regulations. However, districts must confirm that the course aligns to the high school Algebra 1, Geometry, IM1, or IM2 standards as listed in the 2017 Massachusetts Mathematics Curriculum Frameworks. So this is one where if students, we know that there are an increasing amount of students taking Algebra 1 in grade 8, we are allowing that to count as part of the mathematics requirement. However, as it states on the right-hand side there, districts have to confirm that it's aligning to the high school Algebra 1 standards listed in the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks. Okay. In science, students must complete the equivalent of 1 year of any one of the following disciplines. Excuse me, biology, physics, chemistry, or technology/engineering. For this one, those courses must be taken in grades 9 through 12. All of those 3 requirements, ELA, math, and science, apply to students starting in the class of 2026, next year's 12th graders. The good news here is that students that have already completed already earned the competency determination through the old MCAS route because they took it as a 10th grader in 2020-24 retain that benefit. So about 80% of our incoming 12th graders have already met the CD. But for those that have not, districts are going to need to ensure that they have met the coursework requirements that are set forth here. Then beginning in 2027, the class of 2027, this year's incoming 11th graders, there is a U.S. history requirement. That is that the equivalent of a 1-year United States history course must be satisfactorily completed and mastery must be demonstrated. And that course must be taken in grades 9 through 12 as well. So those are the coursework requirements related to the new competency determination requirements. This is the first time we have ever had statewide coursework requirements, but there is much discretion on the part of the district to be able to define what those courses are. We're going to talk about that in a second. And there is some freedom as it relates to mathematics when those courses can be taken. In order to help you with this, we have developed a list of courses. I think the link is in the chat, identified by the Student Course Schedule Code, SCS, that may be aligned with the coursework requirements. That list of courses the link is in the chat. The link is also here on the slide. This is a recommendation, if you will, right? We think that these courses align, but The final determination of which courses are certified to meet the coursework requirements remains with the district. That is part of the process that you're going to have to go through to determine which courses in your course catalog are going to meet the competency determination requirements. But we have tried to help you here and say, we think these courses align with the requirements set forth in the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks. So let's talk about the policy requirements. There are some, in addition to, there are a set of requirements that we're going to ask you to tell us that must be in your CD policy. Okay, that CD policy must include all of the following components and be approved again by the governing body, your governing body, and sent to us. The first thing, the coursework requirements in each of the required subject areas. This is what we were just talking about, including the specific courses that the district considers applicable for the purposes of the competency determination. You must tell us which measures the district will use to determine whether the student has demonstrated mastery in each of the subject areas. You must tell us about the considerations that you are putting in place for students with disabilities and English learners. You also are going to tell us about the considerations that you're going to put in for late enrolling students. And these, what we mean by this is all detailed in that guidance. My first suggestion would be for you to yourself and your teams to do a thorough reading of that guidance and think about how you're going to go through the policy development process. More requirements, continued. The regulations allow for a limited instance in which the district may use MCAS scores to determine competency, may still use MCAS scores. And what we are going to ask you to do is to tell us about when that might be used. You might consider that for for a really late enrolling student and one that you believe has demonstrated competency already through the MCAS, for example, if they have taken the MCAS or if some way use the MCAS to demonstrate competency, but that will be up to the district. We are requiring that all districts have an appeals process. As you know, we have had 3 different appeals process, at least 3, actually, for the last 20 or so years. And we know that stuff happens. There are individual circumstances for students that just warrant something outside the norm. So we are going to require that districts develop an appeals process, tell us what that appeals process is, who's going to hear that appeal, and how you're going to make the decision to award or deny the competency determination. And then again, and this is in the guidance, so I would ask that you start with a thorough read of the guidance, the process by which a current or former student may request a transcript review. So these are students that may no longer be with you, but might have earned the certificate of attainment from you under the previous law. And now they may be coming to you and saying, I'd like to get my diploma because the only reason I didn't graduate was because I didn't pass the MCAS. The district must develop a policy to accommodate these students. All or former students, all individuals need to have a path to a high school diploma. The department can no longer award the competency determination. The law does not allow us to do it anymore. This is a role that we have played for you for many, many years, and we are just not able to do so anymore. So you're going to need, as part of this process, a policy by which you're going to develop a process for current or former students who may want to request a transcript review because they believe they've met all the requirements, but the only reason they haven't graduated is because of the competency determination. Again, this is a role that we've played, but now we are unable to do so, and districts need to afford a path to individuals to earn that high school diploma. If the only reason they haven't passed or earned that high school diploma was the competency determination. Okay, the policy submission process. In the guidance document on pages 9 through 12, this is what outlines exactly the questions that we're going to ask you. So I haven't looked at the Q&A yet. So if some of the questions are, along the lines of what are we going to ask you, I would direct you to pages 9 through 12. Okay, this is where the questions are that districts will have to respond to in GEMS. My suggestion to you is to, again, do a thorough reading, especially in pages 9 through 12, okay? Because what we're going to ask you is what you should be getting approved by your governing body and publicly posting on your website. So I would start at this guidance document as you go through that policy development process with your team, okay? A note here that is not necessarily required, but if in my advice would be to include the U.S. history part now, so that you don't need to go through this again next year. Okay, but certainly for ELA, math, and science, we're going to need to know what that is. The deadline in the regulation is December 31st. And again, start with this, please, and develop that, go through that policy development process that you're all accustomed to with your teams. And this will tell you exactly what you need to tell us, and that should guide you in that development process. Here's the timeline. You all know best on how your governing bodies work and how many the number of meetings that are required to adopt a policy. But here, what you see here is a general timeline that you're going to need to tailor your individual processes to meet this timeline. Over the next, starting soon, I would imagine, districts should start to develop their CD policies, okay? As early as we can this fall, we hope in September, we are going to have detailed steps on the GEMS submission process that we will release along with the application supplement in GEMS. We hope to be able to do that in September, but I can tell you that we are modeling it and we are building it currently on pages 9 through 12 of that submission, of the guidance document. So you can use that to know what you're going to have to give to us. Okay, and then sometime this fall, as whether we're talking October, September, October, November, the districts will develop that policy and get approval from their local governing board. Okay, and that will allow for a public process for people to be able to weigh in on. And then after you've obtained that governing board approval, but no later than December 31st, districts submit their policy and their CD policy and their local graduation requirements to us in GEMS. So the ultimate deadline here is December 31st. I can tell you that our plan is to then turn around and publish all of the CD policies and all of the local graduation requirements for the first time. We plan to do that early in 2026 so that they are available for the public to see. But obviously we can't do that until we receive them all from you. Okay. I am going to, maybe I won't stop the share, but that is the end of the presentation portion of this. I wanted to make sure, and I think we're doing pretty well on time, that we had as much time for questions as possible. But in order to be able to, I think I will stop the share, but Helene, can we stop the recording, please? I'm not going to record the Q&A portion of this.